I am back now with the schedule up there that we have. Today, what I am doing is I went and bought a whole bunch of books, like about 100 books, probably over 100 books this past weekend. I did so many books that I'm going to be sharing with you. I don't think I have many of them right here because I actually spent a lot of time putting them away. I'm so proud of myself that I got them all put on the shelves. 100 more books I got put on the shelves. I was so happy. I also took some books off the shelf and I'm going to recycle those, and I'm going to go give those to I'm going to recycle them by giving them back to the library. So actually reusing them, not really repurposing them, but reusing those. And the reason why is because, well, first of all, I wanted to make more room on my shelf, of course, like I just said. But the other thing is that I got all of those 100 books from the library sale on books. So whenever you need some books, and by the way, I'd be getting a library of books if I were you. So whenever you need some books, that's a great place to look. Look for the signs, because I bet libraries in the springtime are having these sales all over the place. This was my local library, and I cannot tell you the books. So let me tell you the deals that I got on these books. So the first day I bought about 50 books, and at least 50 books. And I paid $40 for them, if you could believe that. Yes, less than $1 a book. And these were like books I really wanted, like for it to help you guys teach. Phonics books and word books and story books and all kinds of things for this classroom, for the classroom. But then I went on Sunday because I wanted to see if they had another set of encyclopedias, young kids encyclopedias that they had there, but they had a newer set. And I didn't want to be a hog since I had the set, but they were still there on Sunday. And you know what it cost me on Sunday? It cost me $2 for that encyclopedia. I could have put more books in there. I probably bought 100 books on Sunday, and do you know what it cost me? Drum roll, please. $6. $6. 3 bags of books. 3 bags of books. $2 each. 2, 4, $6. Can you imagine getting some exciting reading books for you? There were story books there. There were all kinds of books there. Everything that you could want. Every single kind. They had audio books there. They had videos there. They had games for sale, video games for sale. Everything that you could find at the library, they had for sale. And by the way, don't forget that if you didn't find a library sale or something that you wanted for sale at the library, go to the library and borrow it. Get a library card and borrow a library book that you really want. It's just a fun way to spend an afternoon with, somebody that you love, with your mom, with your dad, with your grandma, with your brother, with your sister. It's a great way to spend time with somebody that you love. Every Mother's Day, I used to go with my mom and my sisters, and we would go out to eat. But then what we would also do is we would also go to the bookstore. And it's kind of like a library, but with all brand new books, right? And we would spend hours in the bookstore, and we would go our separate ways, and then we would come back and we would eat a little bit because they had that in the bookstores, right? Coffee or whatever. Then we'd go our separate ways and go look at the books that we wanted, and then come back again and eat something else or talk or laugh or joke. It is a great way to spend time with more than just yourself on a video game or one other person or a person across the planet, right? It's a great way to spend face-to-face time with people that you love, sharing things that you really love to talk about. Okay, and let's get talking. Let's get schooled. All right, so today I am showing you one of the books that I got. I'm going to try and figure out how I'm going to fold some of them in. On Wednesday, we'll have more phonics stuff for you, and I got a lot of phonics books. You might not notice the difference because I just got a lot of phonics books to help me, and I'm probably going to do a lot of the same thing. But this is a book that you will notice that we are going to be starting to do every single day. We'll see how it goes. Every single class day that we have. And you can see 101 ways to improve your grammar skills. Now, here, it's raining, and you could see here that they crossed out the it's right there. See that? So that's this kind of thing that this book helps you with. It's, and then they crossed it out. It's raining cats and dogs. So that's grammar. And if you remember on day 1 of our phonics, which was probably day 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, I don't even know. I don't even remember. But our very first day of phonics, we talked about why it was important to have grammar skills. And you know what the very first pages of this does? The very first pages of this introduction says, why bother with grammar? And it's all kind of the same things that I already said to you. So, good grammar helps you to communicate. I don't have my glasses, and I thought for sure I brought them over, and I didn't. You know what I do have, though? A magnifying glass. Let's look at it this way. Good written grammar will help your grades. All right, that's number 2. The first one was good grammar helps you to communicate. Remember, we talked about that. And when you have to learn how to communicate your ideas, because if you don't learn how to communicate your ideas, it is going to be very frustrating because people won't understand you. We have to learn how to communicate, or it's not like they won't understand your words. It's that they won't really get your whole meaning. And that's the thing. Or maybe they stop listening before you've made your point. Something like that, right? And then the last one, your grammar makes an impression. I'm not reading very well with this because I have to move it along. Your grammar makes an impression. And we talked about that. It makes you look smarter, right? When you know how to write and you know how to communicate your ideas appropriately, it makes you look smarter, right? And who doesn't want to look smarter, right? We all want to look smart, right? Okay, and even smarter, maybe than we are. Okay, that's not what I want. So, what is tip number 1? Tip number 1 is get a good dictionary. Now, I did not prepare myself that well for this morning's class and had everything. I did prepare myself, but I don't have all my books here. So let me go get my dictionaries to show you just a little bit about what I'm talking about, okay? I'm back, finally. Okay, so I had to gather a few things, including my glasses, so I don't have to go back out for my glasses. So tip number 1, get a good dictionary. Now, let me show you a couple dictionaries here. First of all, you could get a pocket dictionary, right? And here is let me make that a little smaller here. We'll keep the tip up, but we'll make it smaller. So this is it's called a pocket dictionary. It obviously will not fit in a pocket, right? I was a little cold, so I put this jacket on, because it was right here. So but it's called a pocket dictionary. And usually you can find these were practically free at the library, right? You can find these in a package, and a lot of times they come in a package, and you usually find them at bookstores right before school is ready to start in September. You can find them all over the place because people are going to college and looking for these. But they come together usually in a 3-pack like this, with a dictionary is one of the things. And then it comes usually with a thesaurus. A thesaurus gives you different words that are similar to it. So maybe you don't like the word that you picked, right? So maybe you want to talk about how a warm summer breeze, right? So you wanted a different word for warm. So you could look up in a thesaurus a different word or breeze, right? Windy, right? I don't know, breezy, whatever. So you wanted to look up a different word for it because you didn't like the word that maybe you used the word 100 times when you were writing, or a whole bunch of times, and you wanted a different word. You didn't want to say the boy ran again. You wanted to say he was, exuberant or something like that, right? Or the boy was excited, you want to say exuberant or happy or whatever, right? You want us to use a different word. That's the thesaurus. And synonyms and antonyms are words. A synonym is a word that means the same thing. It's kind of like a thesaurus, but a thesaurus is like gives you a whole bunch of words, where a synonym gives you a word that is similar in meaning, right? One word that's similar in meaning. So is a thesaurus, usually one word. Antonym is the opposite. So a synonym is a word that means the same thing. If you didn't know exactly what the word was, you could get a synonym, right? An antonym is a word that means the opposite. These are pocket dictionaries, and you could see I could fit 3 of them in my hand, right? And they usually, like I say, you buy them together, the 3 of them together, usually they're packed like this. This dictionary it's not the best dictionary. It does give you, the definitions of words and the pronunciation of words, but it's really, really small letters because they wanted to keep it pocket size, right? They wanted to keep the dictionary pretty small. And so that's what they did. So it's really not the best place to go for a really good definition of a word, right? Now, we're all pretty familiar with Webster's dictionary. I don't have one, actually. I don't have a Webster's dictionary here with me because I like a different one better. And that is, so if you have one that's like a desk copy, so these are more like desk dictionaries. They would be next to or on your desk, next to your computer, right? This dictionary here, the pocket dictionary, is about what you would get if you went and looked online for a word, right? So if you looked online at the online dictionary, this would probably give you a definition like you would get in the small pocket one. Not a really great big definition, but kind of a small definition for you, a short definition, so you could get to the meaning and get going with your work. That's what you would find online, about pretty much like what you would find in this Webster's Pocket Dictionary. So that's why you might want a bigger dictionary that goes next to your desk or to your computer. This is tip number 1 to learn your phonics and grammar and spelling. Tip number 1 is get a good dictionary. The one online is not a good dictionary. I found this Collins Concise Dictionary Plus is an awesome dictionary. So look and see the kinds of, like, something that might be a word that you know that you want to look up here and see the kind of definition they give you for it if you like that definition in that book. But this would be something that you would have next to your computer on your desk. This is not a pocket dictionary. It's a desk reference is what it is. Then there is also what is called an unabridged dictionary. Unabridged dictionary. And I do have one of those. I got those actually at a library sale. I got this actually at a library sale as well. Look at how fat that book is, right? I got a marker in there. Look at how big this dictionary is. And you can see that it's called an unabridged dictionary. An unabridged dictionary. So Webster's New Universal Unabridged Dictionary. What's an unabridged dictionary? This has every single word in it. It's supposed to have every single word. Now, it's an older dictionary, so it doesn't have new words in it, newer words, but it has every single word in it, and it is supposed to have complete definitions, the complete definition. The one from 1985, the Webster's Dictionary from 1885 or something like that, is supposed to be the best dictionary that is out there. I don't know. I don't have one. I would like to get one, but I don't have one. This one is 2003 from Barnes & Noble. All right. So that gives you every single word. If you have a really strange word and you can't find it in the dictionary, but you know it's a word, it will likely be in the newest unabridged dictionary. Okay? So tip number 1 is get a good dictionary. Now, what are we here for? We're here. Today is not phonics, but we are going to give you your tips. Today we are reading the story of Abraham and Sarah. All right, and then we're going to do some review on the Tower of Babel. Remember, we talked about that on Thursday. So, where are we on time? Get my glasses out. And then we can start reading. I can start reading. All right, and I better get going. Where's my page? Remember our last one on the Tower of Babel? And we had those pictures? That was so good, wasn't it? I loved that. Okay. The story of Abraham and Sarah from our Reader's Digest Bible for Children. Abraham lived in the land of Haran with his father, Terah, and all his family. Abraham was an old man. His wife Sarah was also old, and she had never borne a child. She never had a baby. And she really wanted a baby, but she was old. So she didn't expect to have a baby because she was old. God said to Abraham, "Leave your country, your relatives, and your house and the house of your father, and go to the land that I will show you. I will bless you, and I will make you a great people." This is important. He is blessing Abraham, and he is making him a great people. So these are promises that he's making to Abraham. He's blessed, and he will make a great people out of him. What does that mean? I wonder. Maybe he'll be courageous and strong. Let's see. Abraham believed the word of God. He gathered his servants and his herds of animals, and he left Haran with his wife Sarah. Remember what we said about the word of God? Remember, he believed the word of God. So remember what we talked about when we read John chapter 1, we said the word, in the beginning, there was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. And Abraham believed the word of God. Do you think that means he believed in Jesus? Jesus didn't come yet, right? Jesus hadn't come yet. Interesting, isn't it? Kind of interesting. Because Jesus was still there, right? In the beginning was the Word. That was Jesus, remember? Abraham believed we already said that. He set out on a very long journey. When he was camped in Canaan, God said to Abraham, "Lift your eyes to the north and the south, as far east as the sunrise, as far west as the sunset. All the land that you see I give to you and your children and your children's children, for they will number as many as the stars in the sky." There are two more promises. He promises to bless Abraham. He promises to make Abraham a great people, He promises that they will have so many children as the stars in the sky. Wow. And he also says that he will have this great land as well. So there's a lot of promises that God made to Abraham, and it sounds like his children and his children's children as well, which is me and you. That's who that is. Those promises, because if we are children of Abraham, and we likely are, if we're children of Abraham, and we say, who is our God? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When people ask you, who is your God? If you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, if you are Christian, Catholic, you say, my God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We'll talk about Isaac and Jacob later on, but right now we're talking about Abraham. Abraham's God is the same God for all the Christians, for all the Catholics, for all the Jews, and for all the Muslims. Who is that God? He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, let's move on. Now God appeared to Abraham as he was sitting at the entrance to his tent. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing in the hot sun. He told them, "Rest yourselves under the tree. I shall have water brought to wash your feet." Abraham had unleavened bread baked for his guests and chose a young calf from his herd. Okay, so feeding them. The travelers ate, and then they asked him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" Abraham answered, "She is there in the tent. Next spring, Sarah will bear you a son." The travelers declared, "Oh, so Sarah's going to have a son." That's what the travelers are telling him, Abraham. And when Sarah heard them, she laughed to herself. She must have been listening in, for she was much too old to have a child. But the Lord said, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything impossible for God?" Then Sarah was afraid. "I did not laugh," she said, but God said, "Oh, yes, you did." Oh my gosh, how about that? How about getting caught right there, laughing when God says something, and then you lie about it? You're caught in a lie. Who would lie to God as if he didn't know? You were lying. Oh my gosh, of course he knew. He said, "Oh, yes, you did laugh, Sarah." That's what he said. Sarah had a son as God promised. They named him Isaac, which means he laughs. Isn't that awesome? And she was laughing too because she was so happy. He brought laughter, and that's really kind of what it means. Bringing laughter is what that means. He brought laughter because she was so happy. It brought laughter when God said it, and it brought laughter when he really came. He did. "The Lord has indeed given me cause to laugh. Who would have believed that in my old age I would give Abraham a son?" Abraham held a great party so that everyone might rejoice at the birth of the child promised by God. Look at that. Look at that cute picture there of Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac. So we have Abraham, we have Isaac, and obviously Isaac is going to have a son called Jacob. Because who is our God? Our God is, if you're a Christian or Catholic or Muslim or Jewish, your God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Isaac grew up to be a young boy, and there came a day when God called Abraham. "Here I am," Abraham answered, and God said to him, "Take Isaac, your only son, your son whom you love, and go to the mountain that I will show you. There you shall offer him to me." Abraham rose early. He loaded his donkey with firewood, and he left with his son Isaac. Isaac said to him, "Father, I see you are bringing wood for the fire, but where is the lamb for the sacrifice?" Abraham answered, "God knows where the lamb is, my son." And so they walked together. When Abraham arrived on the mountaintop, he built an altar and prepared the fire. But as he grasped the knife, the angel of God called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "I am here," he answered. And the angel told him, "Do not harm your son. I know now that you revere the Lord above all else." Looking around, Abraham saw a ram. That's kind of like a goat. It's like a sheep. A ram is a sheep with horns, is what it is. So it looks similar to a goat, but it's a sheep with horns. Okay? Looking around, Abraham saw a ram with its horns tangled in a bush, and he offered the ram in sacrifice. Again, the angel of God called Abraham, saying, "Because you have done this, God will bless you. Your children's children will number as many as the stars in the sky and the grains of sand by the sea. All peoples of the earth will remember you." So what was he doing? What was Abraham doing, sacrificing his son Isaac? God told him to do that, and he was his only son. Imagine how you would feel if God gave you a gift and then asked to have it back. And let's say that the gift that God gave you was the most important gift that you ever wanted ever before, and that was the gift he gave you. And then he took it back. Can you imagine that? That's kind of what he was doing with his son Isaac. That's what he was doing with Abraham's son Isaac. He gave Abraham and Sarah their son, and then he was taking him back is what he was doing. But then what did God do? He stopped Abraham from sacrificing his son. That's what he did. He stopped him and he said, I know now that you will hold nothing back from me. Abraham was willing to give everything to God. And that included Isaac, his son. God gave we talked about Job a little bit, and just like when God and in our spiritual classroom we talked a lot about Job, when God gives us everything. So if God gives us everything, God could take it away for his reasons as well. But do you think that God knew that Abraham would have obeyed him? Do you think God knew Abraham would have obeyed God and sacrificed his only son, the gift that God gave him? Do you think that God knew Abraham would do that for him, for God? I do. I think God knew Abraham would do that for him. So who didn't know? Then why would God do that? Why would God ask Abraham to sacrifice his son? Why would he do that? If God knew Abraham would do that, why would God ask him? Because who didn't know how far he would go for God? Who didn't know how far he would go for God? Abraham. Abraham didn't know. So Abraham learned how far he was willing to go for God. Abraham learned he would give God everything if God asked. Why? Because he knew, actually from the story of Job, that God wouldn't ask you for something without good reason. He would have his reasons, and he's God, so he can. You know, some of those things are really hard to understand sometimes. They can be hard because there are things that we really want. And let's say for example that we really wanted a video game, right? So let's say or a nice dress or a piece of jewelry or something. And then let's say that we got it and we lost it or we broke it. Wouldn't that make us really, really sad? Of course it would make us really sad. So if we had something and we lost it, putting some lotion on my face. If we had something and we lost it, then that of course would make us really sad. But what we're learning from Abraham is that God might ask us things again, just like he did with Job. We haven't talked about Job though. And we actually don't have a story of Job here in this book. So that's why I talked about Job in the spiritual classroom. It's kind of hard to understand Job because God took everything away from Job. And that was before Abraham. God took everything away from Job. So Abraham knew God could take things away. But God already did that to Job to show us he could take everything. So God didn't do it to Abraham. He showed Abraham though. He showed Abraham that Abraham would give everything he had to God. And that's important for Abraham to know. It's important for Abraham to know that he loved God that much. You might not know if God never asked you, right? If God never asked you to give something up like that, you might not know if you were willing to give it up or not, right? What could you give up your favorite thing in the world for God? Could you do that? Right? Well, Abraham could say, yes, I would. He knew for sure. He wasn't like, well, maybe, I don't know. I would give this up, but not that up. I would give up, my sheep, but I wouldn't give up my son. But Abraham knew he would give everything up for God. That's kind of good to know, don't you think? And he didn't have to. We don't have to. God won't ask you that. God won't ask you the same thing he asked of Abraham, to sacrifice his son. He doesn't ask you to do that. God does not ask you to sacrifice your kids for him. Now, people in the Bible, sometimes they did give their kids to the church to be in service for God. Sometimes they did that, but God will never ask you to sacrifice your kid for him. Isn't that great? Isn't that really good news? Okay, let's see if we can't get through a couple questions here on Abraham. We're not going to be able to get to review our questions on the Tower of Babel. So we'll do that, reviewing our questions on the Tower of Babel on Thursday, but we will get to these questions on the story of Abraham and Sarah. Actually, we might get to the Tower of Babel. I probably will go a little long. What was the first thing that God asked Abraham to do? Did Abraham obey God? And would you do something God asked you to do? So the very first thing God asked Abraham to do, way back in the beginning of the story, what was the first thing that God asked Abraham to do? And I'll give you a hint. He was in Haran, right? So he was in Haran. What did God ask Abraham to do? What was God's promise to Abraham? And if you remember, I listed promises as we were reading in the story. So we'll talk about those when we review this on Thursday. Who came to Abraham's tent? How did Abraham treat them? What news did they bring to Abraham? How did Sarah react when she heard the news that the travelers brought? What did she say to God? What did she say to him? What do you think of Sarah having a baby in her old age? Do you think God performed a miracle? Do you think that was a miracle for Sarah to have a baby when she was very, very old? Do you think that was a miracle? What did God ask Abraham to do with his son Isaac? Why do you think God asked Abraham to do this? Did Abraham obey God? And then what did God do? So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about asking about the sacrifice, right? The sacrifice. What was God's final promise to Abraham? And did God keep his promise? And these are the questions that we had from the Tower of Babel. I'm going to go through them quickly, and we'll talk about them when we get back here on Thursday, because tomorrow we're going to have phonics. So after the flood, what was the language that everyone was speaking? The language that everyone was speaking was the same language after the flood, right? That was the language that everyone was speaking. Let's see here. What's the next question? I am going to go through these questions. What did the people of Babel do, and why did they build the tower? So that's what they did. They built that tower, if you remember, right? They built the tower to the sky. Why? Because they wanted to reach heaven. That's the reason why. They didn't want to act like they were really cool or impressive. They wanted to see God and reach heaven. That's what they wanted to do. So they built a tower to reach God. What did God do? What did God do when the people of Babel were building their tower? Why do you think God did what he did? He confused their language, remember? So that's how, according to the Bible, all of the different cultures started speaking different languages. If you believe in the Bible, that's how it happened, is God confused their language. Why did he do that? Because he said that man would be able to accomplish anything he wanted. And clearly it wasn't time for man to go up to heaven and see God. Clearly we had a lot of work to do, like the parting of the Red Sea, for example. Moses, right? We hadn't met Abraham yet, who made all these promises. So, and then we had to have all these children, because that's what he promised Abraham, right? The children, they'll have many children, and they will have children, as many as the stars in the sky, as many as the sand on the seashore. As many as the sand. Did you ever pick up sand and see how many are just in your hand? That's what he promised Abraham. That many children. Did he keep his promise? He sure did, didn't he? But why do you think God did what he did? Because it wasn't for the Tower of Babel? Because he wasn't ready for them to go to heaven and see God. We had a lot to learn. Where did the people of Babel end up going? All over the earth with the people that they spoke the language like, right? So those people who spoke, for example, Spanish went to Spain, eventually Mexico. But this is at first, right? At first, they kind of just went off into their own lands is what happened with the people that spoke their same language. There we had, if you remember, there was ziggurats, right? Those are ziggurats in the same place where the Tower of Babel was. So we have evidence there that they built things like the Tower of Babel exactly where Babel was. Why was there a flood? Do you think God gets upset sometimes? We already did the story of Noah, right? And I think we went over those questions. Anyway, we don't have time to go over the questions of Noah because we are all done. All right, I will be back here at 9:15 for the Bookless classroom. And what are we doing in the Bookless classroom today? Let's look at that. We are... I don't think I deleted those. That's the reason why. In the Bookless classroom, we are talking about George and Martha Washington. We're starting with U.S. presidents today. So join us at 9:15 if you want to hear more about George Washington. Thanks for joining me. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, and Dr. Annette. I am the teacher. Thank you for joining me in the Early Bird classroom. I will be here tomorrow, and we will be doing phonics tomorrow.